Gather round while I sing you of Wernher von Braun, a man whose allegiance is ruled by expedience. Call him a Nazi, he won't even frown. Nazi schmazi, says Wernher von Braun. Don't say that he's hypocritical, say rather that he's apolitical. Once the rockets are up, who cares where they come down? That's not my department, says Wernher von Braun. Some have harsh words for this man of renown, but some think our attitude should be one of gratitude, like the widows and cripples in old London town, who owe their large pensions to Wernher von Braun. You too may be a big hero once you've learned to count backwards to 0. In German or English, I know how to count down. And I'm learning Chinese, says Wernher von Braun.
At Liberty Mutual, we believe progress happens when people feel secure. That's why we exist to help people embrace today and pursue tomorrow.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Liberty Mutual Insurance is a proud sponsor of American Experience.
As an American-based supplier to the construction industry, Carlisle is committed to developing a diverse workplace that supports our employees' advancement into the next generation of leaders, from the manufacturing floor to the front office. Learn more at carlisle.com.
In dieser Form fliegt die kombinierte Einheit, bestehend aus Geräte- und Triebwerkkapsel, Kommandokapsel und Mondboot.
All those years, we had very, very few inquiries about von Braun's past. We never really had any questions about what are all these Germans doing, involved in this program. That never came up. He was kind of untouchable. He was the rocket man, and he was taking us to the moon. Then when things began to change, he handled it quite well.
I believe you were forced to join the Nazi Party, as I understand it.
No, this isn't quite right. I got a letter one fine day which said, we understand you would like to join the party. And here's a form, an application form, but the circumstances were such that the message would have been very loud and clear, had you not sent it in.
He disavowed any loyalty to Hitler or to the German cause. He acknowledged the regime's crimes. He tried to avoid discussing the politics of World War II.
Von Braun, were you aware that there was a slave camp near the plant you worked in Germany?
Well, you are misinformed. The slave camp was about 400 miles from where I worked, because I was in in charge of the development of the V2 rocket, which took place in Peenemünde on the Baltic, and this slave camp was in central Germany in the Harz Mountains.
Were you aware that there were any atrocities taking place there?
I learned later on that there were atrocities taking place there, but I was not involved in this whole operation.
He had to have known that all those people he saw pushing heavy equipment were horribly abused. He would have had to have been blind, deaf, and mute not to have known that.
Do you feel that it will hinder your reputation at all?
Well, that remains to be seen. As I say, I think this record is for inspection, and I have nothing to hide. I had nothing to hide, and I told the court what I knew. I was here as a witness. I'm not implicated. Remember that.
Only a few short weeks ago, we shared the glory of man's first sight of the world as God sees it, as a single sphere reflecting light in the darkness. As the Apollo astronauts flew over the moon's gray surface on Christmas Eve, they spoke to us of the beauty of life.
In the time that they were focused on going to the moon, the world had changed. Society had changed in pretty fundamental ways.
After Apollo 8, President Nixon sent me around to make talks on the different college campuses. Everywhere I went, I met with antagonism and even hatred. I think I represented to these people the establishment. At one of the places, I had to go in by helicopter because they'd barricaded the entrance to the college. And at Columbia, I was run off the stage by a guy in a gorilla suit. They threw marshmallows at me. It was unbelievable. When we went to Cornell, it was like going into an enemy camp. I couldn't believe I was in America.
And I must say, when you continually point your finger at the establishment in big business, I'd like to just shoot it back at you a little bit. Many of us think one of the greatest problems we have in the environment of the future is the current crop of irresponsible college radicals.
The difference between the reaction on the American campuses and overseas was like night and day.
For the people of this planet, what is the meaning of this stupendous venture?
They were excited, they were happy, they were very congratulatory, they were wonderful everywhere, except on the American campus. Even in Russia, they were very, very friendly. I was there in 1969, my family and I. This was before the lunar landing. We spent 2 weeks over there, went all over the country. They couldn't have been more nice to us.
Another warm welcome for the traveling American astronaut who came far out of his way, all the way to central Siberia to pay tribute to Soviet science. Colonel Borman, you've seen something of the world of Soviet science. How does it impress you?
Well, very much. They certainly have a fine institute here.
The intellectuals there understood their system was corrupt and couldn't last, but they were afraid to talk about it unless you got them off by themselves. It was that kind of a society. And I like to think that the Apollo program had a lot to do with the subsequent dismantling of the Soviet Union.
Have you had any feeling from the cosmonauts of their view toward the impending moon landing in Apollo 11?
Well, I think they feel the same way about that as we do about theirs. They wish us all success, as we've done on every one of their flights.
I remember trying to write as much as I could about what the Russians were doing. We knew very little. Occasionally, they show us spy photography from Baikonur, from the Soviet launching site. But there was a lot of guesswork.
Korolev. He was the von Braun, if you will, of the Russian space program. He died. And in my mind, that's when things started to change as far as the Russians were concerned. They tried to put together a giant rocket, but I always felt that once they lost Korolev, they really lost the genius of the Russian program.
The Korolev lunar program to send the man to the moon have a very sad history. The Soviet Union have the same ideas as the Americans, but our design of the lunar vehicle failed from the very beginning because Korolev technically made it in the wrong way. The N1 program. It was a very complicated project with 30 engines that have to work together. And if you did not test it by stages, you have too many new things. Korolev's people, after Korolev's death, they say, let's assemble everything together without testing. Maybe you will have a good luck. Korolev died, but this project was doomed from the very beginning.
Resuming our interview on Meet the Press from Cape Kennedy, Florida, our guests today are the three astronauts who commanded Apollo missions 8, 9, and 10.
Colonel Borman, during your trip to Russia, did you get any indication in your talks with the Russians when they might be sending cosmonauts to land on the moon? Do you think that they still want to land men on the moon?
There's no question about it. He told everywhere, the indication was not only will we land on the moon, will we go to the moon, we'll go to the planets, and eventually man will leave the solar system, and I believe that.
NASA called a press conference to introduce the Apollo 11 crew, and I went to that. They were introduced, the three guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my considerable pleasure to introduce to you our Apollo 11 crew.
Neil and Buzz and Mike Collins. This was the crew that, if all went well, Apollo 11, with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, was going to be the crew that landed. And Neil was the commander.
Which one of you gentlemen will be the first man to step onto the lunar surface? And what do you think your reaction will be?
The current plan involves one man on the lunar surface for approximately 3/4 of an hour prior to the second man's emergence. Now, which person is which has not been decided up to this point.
Neil was going to be the commander. But there was two schools of thought as to what we should do after landing.
The first man would exit the spacecraft, most probably taking down with him what we call a lunar equipment conveyor. This is a pulley-type system which enables us to transfer various pieces of equipment. And the first priority on the surface is to take photographs from the LEM itself of the landing site. And the second priority is a contingency sample.
Obviously, Neil and I might have differences,
He said that he understood the significance and he wasn't going to rule himself out of being first. Priority is an EVA evaluation.
And so there was a standoff.
So it's at this point that the second person would exit the spacecraft. And
Buzz, his father, was a retired general, and he went on a press campaign, came to my office in New York to campaign for Buzz to be the first man on the moon, not Neil. The controversy was inspired by Buzz's father.
Okay, Buzz, as I recall, isn't your middle name Moon?
My mother's middle name was
family
Moon.
name?
That was my grandfather's name.
By coincidence or good fortune, my mother was named Marion Moon. That was her maiden name. So she was Marion Moon Aldrin. My grandmother was known as Mama Moon. I had two older sisters. They didn't know what to call me, but I was their baby brother. So it was Buzzer, and it got shortened to Buzz. We had a taste of the publicity from Gemini 12.
Celebration in Montclair is for hometown boy, Lieutenant Colonel Edwin Buzz Aldrin, record-setting spacewalker.
She just looked like she was uncomfortable about being in the press. Before we were announced as the crew to Apollo 11, my mother died, committed suicide. I felt that she didn't want to look forward to that sort of thing again. She didn't want to be a part of it.
I wondered if each of the three could tell us very briefly how your families have reacted to the fact that you're taking this historic mission.
Well, who wants to take a crack at it?
Well, I think in my particular case, my family has had 5 years now to become accustomed to this eventuality, and over 6 months to face it quite closely.
Colonel Collins, you'll be the only one of the three making this first moon flight who will not have an opportunity to walk on the moon's surface. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that the way we've put Apollo together, it's a three-man job. All three men are required to do the total mission, and of course I'll be the only one on board the command and service module.
I honestly felt really privileged to be on Apollo 11, to have one of those three seats. Did I have the best of the three? No. But was I pleased with the one I had? Yes.
I do have one complaint, however. I'd like to point out to those of you, particularly in the television business, that I have no TV set on board, and therefore I'm going to be one of the few Americans who's not going to be able to see the EVA, so I'd like you to save the tapes for me, please. I'd like to look at them after the flight.
There were three distinct personalities. Armstrong was the gold standard for the calm, committed, professional pilot that he was.
I probably knew Neil better than most people because we were in Gemini together as a crew. Then he and I became the two who were selected to fly the Lunar Module training vehicle. It really was an exceptional simulation of the Lunar Module in 1/6 lunar gravity. The day of the accident, I went out in the morning. There was a bit of a wind. That afternoon, Neil went over to fly this thing, Unbeknownst to us on that day, the sensor for the hydrogen peroxide fuel had failed. So when the red light came on and they said, okay, Neil, you got 30 seconds to go, head on down, he didn't know, nor did the ground know, that he really only had about 15 seconds of fuel. Neil was the consummate test pilot. He packed up and went to his office, you know. He said, oh yeah, I ejected. That's Neil Armstrong for you. 6 months later, another test pilot crashed. I never flew it after that. It's easy to see that the lunar landings might have well had crashes on the moon.
The Soviets had another secret lunar project, an automatic lunar system called Lunar 15. We wanted to land it on the moon the same way as Apollo. It was possible that this will just drill the moon, extract some soil, and then fly back to the Earth before the Americans, because it was more efficient. And we have scheduled this launch more or less at the same time, on the summer 1969.
Moscow's morning newspapers today ignored the impending Apollo 11 flight to the moon. The Russians are not saying very much about Luna 15 either. That's their own unmanned spaceship that is expected to reach the moon either today or tomorrow.
I don't think anything in history has ever happened like this, Frank, with any group so large. We think there must be at least 1 million people, and to us it's a terribly moving scene.
There are 1 million people who've made their way down to the Cape to see this rocket go off. 1 million people in the immediate environs of Cape Kennedy to watch it go off from that launch complex 39A.
Now may I have your attention? I'd like to take this opportunity to discuss the Apollo 11 profile, which will begin tomorrow morning. We'll climb through an airlock into the lunar module. The third astronaut is astronaut B, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins. Collins will remain on board the command and service module, serving as a communication link between the surface of the Earth and the surface of the moon.
Now, all the signs in the back. You go every sign, you can go every sign.
They're against the space guy.
At the time of the Apollo 11 launch, Ralph Abernathy led a group of protesters to the Kennedy Space Center to protest the priorities of the federal government.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, on the eve of one of man's noblest ventures, I am profoundly moved by our nation's scientific achievements in space and by the heroism of the three men who are embarking for the moon. I have not come to Cape Kennedy merely to experience the thrill of this historic launching. I'm here to demonstrate in a symbolic way the tragic and inexcusable gulf between America's technological abilities and our social injustice.
Tom Paine went out to Ralph Abernathy's group and met with them. He's the new head of NASA, and they talked.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here because you invited me to be here and because I want to be here. If it were possible for us tomorrow morning to not push the button and to solve the problems to which you are concerned, believe me, we would not push the button. But the problem is that...
He said, you know, this is something that we as a nation have decided that we need to do, and we think that these results are going to be positive for everybody.
We would like to see you hitch your wagons to our rockets and to tell the American people that the NASA program is an indication of what this country can do.
And then he invited a select group of the people who were in the protest to attend the launch, and among them Ralph Abernathy.
Encourage this country to tackle many of its other problems.
As our brave, courageous heroes make their way to the moon home tomorrow, may they never forget their suffering brothers and sisters down here on the earth. May they think about us tomorrow and pray for us as we will be praying for them.
The urge to explore was so deeply ingrained in the human psyche. That goes back to our earliest days as Homo sapiens, this curiosity. What was this large, shiny white globe? What was it? Was it God? We attributed so many explanations to the moon. And now, at last, we had the opportunity to go and see for ourselves, to satisfy that curiosity. It was something that you couldn't just turn off.
Tomorrow, we, the crew of Apollo 11, are privileged to represent the United States in our first attempt to take man to another heavenly body. We feel very honored that we can participate in this voyage, represent our nation. We think the country has provided us with the finest equipment, finest training, the finest preparation that anyone can receive. We look forward to going. We thank all of you for your help and your prayers.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Frank Reynolds at ABC Space Headquarters in New York. It is July 16th, 1969, and we are all about to witness the fulfillment of that promise that President Kennedy made at Rice University Stadium in Texas on September 12, 1962.
They take with them this morning the good wishes and the admiration of a world of people. As man, a species born and who's lived all his life on Earth, moves with this journey out into the solar system, and so, presumably, begins with this journey his dispersal in other places out in the universe.
Astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and then finally Mike Collins, plus their suit technicians and Director of Flight Crew Operations, Deke Slayton, now boarding the transfer van. The transfer van now departing from the Manned Spacecraft Operations Building at the Kennedy Space Center on the start of its 8-mile trip to Launch Pad A here at Complex 39. Right now, our count at 3 hours, 3 minutes and counting, aiming toward the planned liftoff time of 9:32 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. This is Launch Control.
It was still twilight, and I could hear a faint siren and some blinking lights, and I looked off to my right, and there was the convoy of half a dozen vehicles bringing the astronauts to the launch pad. And it was just the most beautiful thing you ever saw.
The riskiest part of most missions at that time, to my mind, were the launch. You're sitting on a small atom bomb. Of course, the landing had never been done before. That's very risky. This was a culmination of a lot of lives that were lost and a lot of lives that were tragically broken. So I was quite concerned about the mission.
It was clear, first of all, to the NASA people that success was not guaranteed and that there was a chance of a catastrophic occurrence with the worst possible astronauts being stranded on the moon alive, but unable to get back. Nixon had brought Apollo 8 commander Frank Borman into the White House to advise he and his associates. And it was Borman that said, "Prepare for what you say to the widows."
So, up there this morning, let's all think of those three men, three superb pilots. Armstrong, the commander, Aldrin, the man who will share the journey, the unknown part of this lunar journey to the moon, and Collins, the man who's going to fly them round. And here they are at breakfast a couple of hours ago, and the traditional steak and eggs, and how they can eat it with this journey before them, Lord alone knows.
At this moment, millions of Frenchmen are glued to their television sets to watch the launching of Apollo 11.
Britain is not a participant in the space race, but she is an avid spectator.
They're going to land on the moon.
And then what are they going to do?
And they're going to walk around.
And then what are they going to do?
Go back off.
Well, in my opinion, it's a very, very marvellous achievement. I only hope it's successful.
I think it's disgusting. It's a pity they haven't got something else to do.
It has to be over 100 degrees here in the broiling Florida sun, where the
VIPs, the very important persons, and indeed the VVIPs, the very, very important persons, are gathered to watch this launch just downrange. Among them here are former President Johnson, who helped to shape the space program as Senate Majority Leader, the new Vice President, Mr. Agnew, who has already stirred a controversy by suggesting that this administration commit itself to sending a man to Mars by the end of the century.
I was doing the countdown commentary from the back row of the Launch Control Center. Launch Control Center is about 3.5 miles from the launch pads, which is considered to be the safe distance as far as sound and blast is concerned. Thank God we had 3,000 press people in here for Apollo 11. They did all kinds of tests, acoustics tests. They equated the sound to sitting in the first row of a hard rock, heavy metal band. It was just, wow.
That Eagle was go. The swing arm now coming back to its fully retracted position as our countdown continues. T-minus 4 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. Skip Chauvin informing the astronauts that the swing arm now coming back.
I think there were 500 people in that launch control center. Just rows and rows of consoles and technicians sitting looking at their own particular gauge that they were monitoring. I was the only civilian in there because that's where I was supervising the filming of the launch. That's the first time I understood what it meant to smell fear. I've heard that expression ever since I was a kid. And it was a distinctive smell. It wasn't body odor, it was the smell of fear. Every single one of those 500 people was afraid that it would be their little gauge, their little valve that would go wrong.
All indications coming in to the control center at this time indicate we are go. 1 minute, 25 seconds in the counting.
We're getting close. We're getting close.
All the second stage tanks now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
She's passing the tower. She's lifting.
Tower cleared.
We have power cleared. We have power cleared. We're beginning to feel the first thunderous roar.
Oh boy, it looks good, Wally.
Vibrations in the ground. The sound was deafening, making your shirt and your slacks flap. It was a big dog experience. The flat out, it just took your breath away.
Hot, straight and true all the way, toward a moon 218,000 miles distant. A moment many Americans, many people never believed could happen or would happen.
We're through the region of maximum dynamic pressure.
Saturn V rocket ever blew up. The Saturn I, the 1B, and the Saturn V. I thought surely one of those suckers was going to blow up. It's a real tribute to the engineering of von Braun's people, primarily.
33 Saturns were flown in the time that they were built. Never failed. They completed their mission and they never carried a weapon in space. And it was done by a bunch of government guys, you know.
There's really nothing to say about it. What can you say about a site like that?
CBS News color coverage of Man on the Moon. The epic journey of Apollo 11.
As a director, I had to make this very, very exciting and make it more like a movie. We alone spent almost $1 million on the production, which for a news event in those days, in '69, was astronomical. Remembering all the great science fiction B films I saw as a boy, I got a sense of things that I would like to try and do. Like creating a full-size mock-up on a lunar landscape and using models to explain things.
The time is next Sunday. The place is the lunar surface.
We would say CBS News simulation, CBS News animation, telling the audience this is not from the moon at this moment in time or in space. Doug Trumbull, the great special effects creator for 2001, I called him and hired him to work for me. I needed Doug to create a system for putting alphanumeric graphics on the screen. We named it HAL, in honor of HAL from 2001.
HAL has characteristics unlike most of the sophisticated machines you've ever seen. So
we had Walter talk to HAL.
Welcome to CBS, HAL. Are your memory banks keyed up for today's events?
We didn't have a voice. We didn't go that far.
Might show us, for instance, how Columbia, the command module, acquires tracking stations.
We stayed on. I mean, we were on the air for 36 straight hours. We knew that the whole world was seeing this.
11, Houston, that's a beautiful picture now we got. We're looking at a 12-second delay, and to us, you're just bringing it down by the optics now.
So things are going well. They went into Earth orbit exactly as planned. They have gone into their translunar trajectory, their course to the moon exactly as planned. They have docked with the lunar module still in the third stage of their Saturn rocket. They will be ejecting that, and then with the lunar module attached to their nose, they'll be on the way to the moon.
Yeah, we're about to open the hatch now. Right.
We'd been training for 6 months on doing something and getting closer and closer, and now it's approaching the time and you finished your training.
The vehicle is surprisingly free of any debris floating around. It's very clean. Well, you said it's pretty hard to describe this view. It's really, really great. Now you know how we feel. Hey, that's a great shot right there. We see you in there. Guess that's Neil and Mike. Better be, anyway.
But how is the Apollo spaceship doing? Latest reports from Houston say the craft is in its 10th orbit of the moon, while the Soviet spacecraft Luna 15 is also still in orbit, but in an elongated path. Bob, what's the scene at Houston now?
Well, it's a bit early in the morning, but they're beginning to gather. I think probably you could sum up the situation here. The feeling in most people's minds is that it's a tremendous sense of history and an awareness that this is the most important thing historically that's happened for a long time, and possibly the greatest physical event that has ever taken place.
What's the speculation about the first words Neil Armstrong will utter as he steps off the ship?
Well, everyone's noticed that they're a pretty taciturn group, the crew of Apollo 11, and no one really knows, and he's been very careful not to say anything. He's avoided it. But there's one curious little rumor going around. He comes from a place in Ohio called Wapakoneta. Wapakoneta is known for a cheese factory, a small cheese factory, run and owned by a man called Freddie Fisher. And for months now, Armstrong has been playing a little game with Freddie Fisher because that company's been trying to capitalize on the publicity by referring to the moon as being made of their cheese. So it's possible that he may make some reference to cheese, and it may well be Freddie Fisher's cheese that he talks about.
You really think he might be that corny?
Well, yes.
11, you got a pretty big audience. It's live in the U.S., it's going live to Japan, Western Europe, and much of South America. Everybody reports very good color. Appreciate the great show. It looks like it's going to be impossible to get away from the fact that you guys are dominating all the news back here in us. Even Pravda in Russia is headlining the mission and calls Neil the czar of the ship.
Neil wasn't particularly outgoing. He was hard to get to know. I'm not much of a cocktail discussion person either.
Yeah, hello there, sports fans. You got a little bit of me, plus Neil's in the center couch, and Buzz is doing the camera work this time. Roger,
Mike was the one that probably had a better sense of humor of seeing the lighter side of life.
Well, I put on a coat and tie if I'd known about this ahead of time. We are very comfortable up here, though. We do have a happy home. There's plenty of room for the three of us, and I think...
Mike asked him at one time when we were in the command module approaching the moon, he said, well, Neil, have you thought about what you're going to say? Because, of course, the newspapers were posing the question, what will the first man say when he puts his foot on the ground? Mike said, did you think about what you're going to say? And Neil said, no, I'll wait till I get there and think about it. And I don't think Mike believed him, and I didn't either.
Columbia, Houston, we'll have LOS at 10128. AOS for you, 10215, over.
Houston has just told Apollo 11 We'll see you on the other side. They told them that a few minutes ago. They are not, as everybody knows by now, a very talkative crew. They said, we'll see you on the other side, and the response from Apollo 11 was, okay.
We're approaching one of the critical moments of this flight. At 1:46 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, the command module and the lunar module will begin undocking. The lunar module cutting itself free from the command module, beginning the maneuvers which in 2 hours and 32 minutes from now should place it on the surface of the moon.
Clear, Houston, Roger, reading you the same now. Could you repeat your burn status report? We copied the residuals and burn time, and that was about it. Send the whole thing again, please. It was like perfect. Your Delta Tick 0, burn time 557, 0, 1, 88, 9er.
As they're circling the moon now, at this altitude, the Luna 15 is in an orbit similar to the one that the lunar module will assume after that descent orbit insertion burn.
Showed us, 60.9 by 169.9.
It does increase the speculation as to what the Soviet unmanned spacecraft is doing up there.
Okay, Charlie, we're in the lab.
Okay, let's go there, Capcom on the hot fire. Okay, all flight controllers going around the horn, gonna go for undocking.
Okay, Retro, go. Fido, go. Guide, go. Control, go. Telcom, go. GNC, go. Ecom, go. Surgeon, go.
Capcom, we're go for undocking.
When it was time to descend from lunar orbit and land on the moon, I was there watching. The descent to the lunar surface happened pretty quickly. It was tense.
Hello, Eagle, Houston, we're standing by, over. Eagle, Houston, we see you on the steerable, over. Roger, Eagle, done, got. Roger, how does it look? Eagle has wing. Roger. Eagle, Houston, we recommend you yaw 10 right will help us on the high gain signal strength, over.
Flight controllers gonna go for powered descent. Retro, go. Fido, go. Guidance, go. Control, go. Telcom, go. GNC, go. Ecom, go. Surgeon, go. Capcom, we're go for powered descent.
GeneCom's getting a go, no-go for descent.
I did not think we'd land on Apollo 11. I don't think anybody thought we would actually land the first time. We figured something would happen, we'd get a wave off, something, it just wouldn't go right.
Over now. Roger.
They are face down, windows down.
Roger. You go to continue power descent. You're a go to continue power descent.
Okay, everybody, let's hang tight and look for landing radar.
What, guns?
10 minutes to the touchdown.
We got data dropout. You still looking good?
10 minutes to a landing on the moon.
Bear in mind that for everyone all over the world who was watching this during the descent to the moon, There was an audio experience. The camera that shows the descent right to the surface is a film camera. So, as it was happening, is not readily viewable.
We're seeing here our CBS simulation of what should be taking place at this moment according to the flight plan.
Our position check downrange show us to be a little off. Roger, copy.
Armstrong saying a little more downrange on position. You'll have to correct slightly. They should be through 45,000 feet.
And I kept thinking, as the lunar module went down from the command module in lunar orbit and got closer and closer and closer, I kept thinking they were going to abort. I mean, they're not going to make it on the first try. Inconceivable in my eyes.
Houston, you're looking at our Delta 8.
That's affirmative.
Program alarm.
Looking good to us, over.
1202. 1202.
Of course, the computer was, overloading.
Houston, give us a reading on the 1202 program alarm.
They had a computer on the spacecraft that would make your iPhone look like the most powerful thing in the world. It was primitive.
We're still go, altitude 27,000 feet.
Same alarm, and it appears to come up when we have a 1668 up.
Roger, copy.
Okay, we'll monitor his Delta 8.
What's this alarm, Wally?
It's a go case that just apparently some function is coming up on the computer.
Delta 8 looks good now.
Roger, Delta 8 is looking good to us. Okay, all flight controllers, hang tight.
There were all these problems.
Descent to fuel crit. Descent to fuel critical. He didn't want to say critical. Eagle, Houston, it's descent to fuel to monitor, over.
They were running low on propellant, and they had overshot the landing site.
Oh, boy.
42. Altitude 13,005.
And they're just a little under 5 miles from the landing site. With that high
We're now in the approach phase, everything looking good.
They have 70 seconds in which to redesignate the landing site. To take a good look at it now if they want to change it.
Says we're go, altitude 9,200 feet.
Slowing down below 300
per hour descent rate. They're getting a look now such as no man has ever had at the surface.
900.
They should be getting a good look at it now. They should decide very soon if they
Eagle,
like it.
you're looking great. Coming up 9 minutes.
We're now in the approach phase, everything looking good.
Okay, all flight controllers, go for landing. Retro, go. Fido, go. Guide, go. Control, go. Telcom, go. GNC, go. Ecom, go. Surgeon, go. Capcom, we're go for landing. Eagle, Houston, you're a go for landing, over.
Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet. Copy. Alarm. 1201. 1201.
Roger, 1201 alarm.
Good heavens.
Gene Kranz, who was the mission director, he had to make a decision to let the landing proceed or whether to abort it.
Roger, 1201 alarm.
Same type, we're go, flight.
Okay, we're go. We're go, same type, we're go.
Flight Fido right on, real good. 2,000 feet, 2,000 feet, into the ag, 47 degrees.
Roger.
47
How's
degrees.
American looking, Bob? It looks okay, we're about 4.5. Roger.
He stayed cool and calm, and he kept everybody focused. No panic. He had confidence in Armstrong, that Armstrong would manage the fuel consumption and the altitude. But it was touch and go.
They got a momentary alarm on their system there, but decided that
Eagle looking great, your go.
it was nothing.
Got the beam off to our right now. Roger.
The other thing that happened, the landing site that he was supposed to land was a big crater. And Neil, he saw this giant crater about 60 feet deep, 100 yards wide, and he put that thing in a hover position with 30 seconds of fuel left in the tank.
They've got a good look at their site now. This is the critical time. They're going to hover. They're going to make a decision.
300 feet down, 3.5.
I think we better be quiet.
Raj. Okay, the only call-outs from now on will be fuel.
All we knew was that Armstrong was manually steering the lunar module looking for a safe place to land. And the fuel kept running lower and lower and lower.
Okay, 75 feet. Start looking good, down a half. 6 forward. Low level. Low level. 60 seconds. Lights on. Down 2.5. Forward. Forward. 40 feet down 2.5. Picking up some dust. Straight shadow. 4 forward. 4 forward. Drift into the right a little. Down a half.
30 seconds.
Contact light. Okay, engine stop. ACA at a descent. Mode control both auto. Descent engine command override off. Engine arm off.
We've had shutdown.
413 is in.
Oh, they made it on the first try.
We copy you down, Eagle. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility, we copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
Man on the moon. Houston, Tranquility Base.
You're looking good here.
The Eagle
Yeah,
has
he has landed. Tranquility Base. Eagle is at Tranquility. Over.
Okay, keep the chatter down in this room.
It looks like we're mending the exercise enough. Roger, Eagle, and you are safe for T1.
Houston, the auto targeting was taking us right into a football field-sized crater.
Neil landed with 17 seconds of fuel left.
You rip the copy out of a typewriter, and the guy, a Western Union guy, would grab the copy, run over, teletype to New York. And there was a guy in New York who was assigned to ripping my copy off the teletype machine, rushing over to the national desk. And he told me that was the most exciting day of his life. It was a good day. I mean, it was a giddy day, I think, for a lot of us. Nothing quite matched that day.
Yes, Jim, I don't want to interrupt you, but we have just had a bulletin from UPI, United Press International, Jodrell Bank in England. The Jodrell Bank tracking station said today indications were Russia's Luna 15 satellite has landed on the moon. They say now that Luna 15 has landed on the moon in the Sea of Crises, about 500 miles away from the landing site of Apollo 11.
If we look at the moon's surface, Luna 15 came over Eagle's landing area. This is roughly Site 2 here. And somewhere in this area is where Jodrell Bank claims Luna 15 landed.
One of the scientists at Jodrell Bank is now quoted as saying, "It is now possible that the Russian probe will be back faster than the Americans. There may be savings in time with an unmanned craft with no docking procedure."
So recapping, all is well at Tranquility Base aboard Eagle. The moonwalk due to begin about 20 minutes from now.
The moonwalk now beginning just about an hour later than originally planned. That screen blank at the moment there in mission control as we look at it, direct by satellite from Houston.
Houston, this is Tranquility. We're standing by for a go for a cabin deep breath. Over.
Tranquility Base, this is Houston.
Armstrong beginning that very cumbersome and difficult act of getting down on his stomach.
How am I doing? You're doing fine.
To go out feet first. They're obviously going extra careful. At most, unless he really takes his time, it should be no more than a minute and a half, 2 minutes from now.
Got it.
Okay, Houston, I'm on the porch. Okay.
Handrails there, and then from the front porch down on the first rung of the ladder.
Any minute now he should release the controls that turns on the television. Any minute now we should see pictures.
Can verify TV circuit breaker in. Roger, TV circuit breaker's in. And base 5 clear. Roger. And we're getting a picture on the TV. And currently it's upside down on our monitor, but we can make out a fair amount of detail. Stand by.
There he is. There's a foot coming down the steps.
There is Armstrong.
Okay, I just checked. Getting back up to that first step. That isn't collapsed too far, but it's adequate to get back up. Roger, we copy. It's a pretty good little jump. Depressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches, although the surface appears to be very finely grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. And step off the limb now. It's 1 small step for man, 1 giant leap for mankind.
That was Neil's quote. I didn't understand.
Well, 1 small step for man, but I didn't get the second phrase. One of our monitors here at our space headquarters is able to hear that. We'd like to know what it was.
Surface is fine and powdery. I can pick it up loosely with my toe. It does adhere in fine layers, like powdered charcoal, to the sole and sides of my boot.
His quote was, "That's 1 small step for man, 1 giant leap for mankind."
Of my suit and the treads and the fine sandy particles. Neil, this is Houston. We're copying.
There was a video camera that was recording them coming down the ladder, and then there was another portable camera which they took and moved out away from the lunar module. And that was the only vision that humans around the world had of what was happening on the moon.
Here you come into our field of view. Let me move that over the edge for you.
There's a ghostly quality about it because you can see through people. Well, that's a very clever way they had of limiting the amount of signal that they had to broadcast. You couldn't transmit high-definition television from the equipment that they had on the moon. It couldn't be done. So you're going to have to pare down your expectations of the quality of the image that you're going to see.
Okay, ready for me to come out? All set. Okay, you saw what difficulties I was having. I'll try to watch your bliss from underneath here.
Aldrin about to emerge apparently from the spacecraft.
Okay, your bliss looks like it's clearing okay. Your toes are about to come over the sill. Okay, now drop your bliss down. There you go, you're clear. Now I want to back up and partially close the hatch. Making sure not to lock it on my way out. Particularly good thought. It's a very simple matter to hop down from one step to the next. You've got 3 more steps and then a long one. Okay, I'm going to leave that 1 foot up there and both hands down about the 4th rung up. There you go. That's a good step. Yep. About a 3-footer.
And now we have 2 Americans on the moon.
Beautiful view. Isn't that something? Magnificent sight out here. Magnificent desolation.
There's no way that words can really describe the enormity or the timelessness, the magnificence. It was so desolate. But I could have thought beforehand, and I probably wouldn't have come up with that. It's this, yet it's that.
We'd gotten ourselves on to another world and put our foot there. It was not just we, the Americans. It was we, the humans. We, the people of Earth. It was one of us.
Depuis les astronautes sur la surface de la Lune.
Go. Trainer ought to be getting the TV out.
Bill is now unveiling the plaque that is. For those who haven't read the plaque, we'll read the flag that's on the front landing gear of this LAM. There's two hemispheres, one showing each of the two hemispheres of Earth. Underneath it says, "Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. It came in peace for all mankind." It has the crew members' signatures and the signature of the President of the United States.
Before the flight, we knew there was going to be some kind of plaque, and they were kicking around what it should say. NASA had to clear it with the White House, and they said, well, you know, I don't see anything in there about God, and, you know, the president's big on God.
The person in the White House that was responsible for signing off on the design of the plaque said we put in AD, 1969 AD, as a sneaky way of noting that we were using a Christian calendar.
Houston, Columbia on the high gain, over.
Columbia, this is Houston reading you loud and clear, over. I guess you're about the only person around that doesn't have TV coverage of the scene.
That's all right, I don't mind a bit. How is the quality of the TV?
Oh, it's beautiful, Mike, it really is.
Oh, geez, that's great. Is the lighting halfway decent?
Yes, indeed. They've got the flag up now.
Beautiful, just beautiful.
The flag was an act of Congress. Congress passed a resolution requiring it. A lot of people felt there shouldn't be a flag. They said, who are we to put the American flag up?
Oh, so they planted a flag on the moon, but they do that on mountaintops. And in fact, people would consider it strange if they didn't plant a flag.
Roger, we'd like to get both of you in the field of view of the camera for a minute.
President Nixon, he wanted NASA to even play the Star-Spangled Banner. At least we got that canned.
I just talked to the president, and the White House is go.
People knew it was American on the moon. You didn't have to play the Star-Spangled Banner to tell them that.
Neil and Buzz, the President of the United States is in his office now and would like to say a few words to you, over.
Let's face it, he had nothing to do with Apollo 11, and I told him that.
That would be an honor.
I said you ought to be very, very concise, short, and humble about it, or at least not grandstanding.
Go ahead, Mr. President. This is Houston out.
Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you... For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. And for people all over the world, I am sure they too join with Americans in recognizing what an immense feat this is. Because of what you have done, the heavens have become a part of man's world. And as you talk to us from the Sea of Tranquility, it inspires us to redouble our efforts to bring peace and tranquility to Earth. For one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one. One in their pride in what you have done, and one in our prayers that you will return safely to Earth.
For a brief period of time, people just sort of paused and watched this thing take place. And there was a sort of momentary sense of community all around the world.
Leave them out of your field of view, is that right now, Houston? That's affirmative, Buzz.
Now, once the two of us put the flag up, And I knew where the TV was, so I got in front of it and demonstrated different ways of moving around. The TV was looking at the scenery. We happened to be passing through.
And about 2 or 3 or maybe 4 easy phases can bring you to fairly smooth.
There was the being in the suit and the lightness of the gravity. But you know you're on camera. You're gonna have cameras on you all the time. What can I do? Well, I can hop like this.
So-called kangaroo hop. That's worse, but it seems so your forward ability is not quite.
I got a big backpack, and you have to acknowledge that you're carrying that when you make a turn.
All right, you do have to be rather careful to keep track of where your center of mass is.
It really wasn't what you'd call a challenge other than to look nonchalant in front of people.
But this may be a function of the suit as well as lack of gravity forces.
Early in our being outside, I heard Neil say something about it. Beautiful, isn't it? And I thought, that's not beautiful.
The date's now indelible. It's going to be remembered as long as man survives. July 20th, 1969, the day man reached and walked on the moon.
We heard on the news today, 11, that the New York Times came out with a headlines, the largest headlines they've ever used in the history of the newspaper.
Yes, but landing and walking on the moon, of course, is only the halfway point in Apollo 11's mission. Now Armstrong and Aldrin must safely return to the command module and begin the long and very welcome journey home.
Crew of Eagle going through their pre-ignition checklist.
Okay, standing by for 2 minutes to...
The only thing NASA had on the mission that did not have redundancy was the ascent engine on the lunar module. They had one shot to light that thing and go back up into lunar orbit. And if it didn't work on the first try, the likelihood of it working on the second try was pretty slim, or zero. And they knew that. We did at one point have a marooned headline in type with big typeface. If the ascent engine on the moon didn't light up, they were marooned. So that was the headline we had, ready to go.
This engine burned 7 minutes and 18 seconds, Frank, to get them into that 9.9 mile orbit, and it has to work.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, port stage, engine arm ascent, proceed. Beautiful. 26, 36 feet per second up. 5 to the pitch over.
That ascent engine that has never been fired before in similar circumstances has fired.
Very quiet ride.
Armstrong and Aldrin are off the lunar surface after a stay of 21 hours and 36 minutes, and all continues to go exactly as planned.
Per second vertical rise.
Eagle Houston, to request manual start override.
the steps involved in Apollo, all that hard work, all that detective work, all that head scratching and eureka moments, getting out to the moon, getting down on the moon, getting up from the moon and getting back to the mothership, sort of a winnowing of problems. They all came together pretty much perfectly.
The big news this morning, Jodrell Bank has just come through and said that now their tracking data as they analyze it indicates that Luna 15 may have plunged to the surface of the moon at around 300 miles an hour.
Lovell says if Luna 15 hit the surface at that speed, nothing could be likely to survive such a landing.
Luna 15 hit the moon's surface at a speed of 300 miles an hour, indicating it may have crash landed.
I was not with my father when the Apollo 11 landed. I was on my vacation with my friends. And we were, you won't believe, in Chernobyl. It was this river Pripyat with the forest filled with mushroom. And we have one of our friend, he was officer from the KGB intelligence, and he had the telescope. So we have this telescope and look there. It was no broadcast on the Soviet television. It was just small, several lines somewhere in the middle of the newspaper that American reported that they landed on the moon. But then later, I brought this film to my father. It was 16 millimeters, because Soviets didn't show anybody except the professionals, but we watched this movie together. He say he cannot understand why Soviets failed to send men to the moon. And we just sadly said, yes, they did it.
The Stars and Stripes flies proudly now over the Sea of Tranquility. A new chapter in human history has opened. The race for the moon is over. Man's probe into the universe has begun.
Roger, the Hornet is on station, just far enough off the target point to keep from getting hit.
Yes, we see it. We see it. Here it is. Apollo 11 coming right down toward the prime recovery ship.
I was proud for the human beings. We compete with each other, but at the same time, we have respect.
Oh, I think everybody felt that they had a piece of it.
Everybody felt they had a piece of it, and they did. I thought at the time it was the beginning of something. I thought it was the beginning of moving out to other planets.
Of course, that question still remains, the question of contamination, whether enough precautions have been taken to protect the Earth from anything that they might bring back in the way of rudimentary forms of life.
The opinion seems to be generally, among the scientists who are represented here, at least, that the possibility of some sort of contamination is very, very remote, and that adequate steps have been taken to prevent it, at least adequate as far as anyone can possibly figure out.
The door opens, and out come America's Apollo 11 astronauts, waving, albeit their faces completely covered by these BIG suits.
On the one hand, you got rooms full of scientists saying, we don't think there are any germs up there, but should there be, we ain't gonna expose the population of the Earth to these germs. So they had all these procedures. But then, look at it this way. Suppose there were germs on the moon. There are germs on the moon, we come back, the command module's full of lunar germs. Command module lands in the Pacific Ocean, and what do? They open the hatch. You gotta open the hatch. All the damn germs come out.
You have to laugh a little bit because when you get in the lifeboat out of the spacecraft, you have this biological isolation garment, the big garment. They've got disinfectant and they got a rag and they sponge you down. When they get through, they have a weight and they tie it around the rag and they throw it overboard and it takes all those germs down the bottom of the ocean. Oh, I wonder if they're going to survive down there.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. There was a huge flaw in the planning.
President Nixon waving to the astronauts. The curtains have been drawn. There they are in the rear window.
Have you been able to follow some of the things that happened when you've gone? Did you know about the All-Star game?
Yes, sir. The capsule communicators have been giving us daily news reports.
Yeah. Were you American League or National League?
I'm a National League man. I'm nonpartisan, sir.
Yeah, that's right. There's the politician in the group, right.
We had to be in isolation, I believe, 21 days from the time we left the moon. It wasn't as if some horrible injustice had been done to us. It was fine. I was glad to be back.
Do you suppose Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin have any concept of what's in store for them? The first men to have set foot on the moon, to meeting this dream of the 2 billion years, their lives can never be the same.
You're now national heroes. What are your initial feelings about being heroes? How do you believe it will change your lives? And do you think that maybe you'll get another chance to go to the moon, or are you going to be too busy being heroes?
The trip around the world was very, very interesting. They put a whole big airplane at our disposal, you know, the backup Air Force One. It had a whole crew, 3 of us and our 3 wives, some people from NASA headquarters, 28 cities in 33 days or something like that.
These guys, they've never really been out, exposed.
took anything like this.
Tantos amigos.
That stuff just went totally beyond any of our belief that would have happened. And I think the astronauts were just totally overcome.
The presidential jet arrived at Heathrow, bringing America's Man on the Moon team to Britain.
It's the only communist country of their tour, so for this reason, Yugoslavia regards the visit of the 3 American astronauts as a special and significant honor.
These astronauts were famous. It was unbelievable how much people came out to see them. I think Kennedy would have loved that, to have seen the effect that his boys, you might say, had around the world. That was a wonderful chance for America to touch all these other countries. Once they saw what the rest of the world thought about NASA and what they had accomplished, then they realized, hey, we made an impact.
We saw many, many signs that said, we did it. Not us, we, they, the whole world.
They all had that identical feeling of, by golly, we, mankind, did this thing and we're all brothers together. And it'd certainly be nice if we could use the space program to further that feeling. How to do it is a more complicated question.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Apollo 11 press conference.
You know, the most frequently asked question is, what did it feel like?
When you first stepped on the moon, did it strike you as you were stepping on a piece of the Earth, or sort of what your inner feelings were, whether you felt you were standing in a desert, or this was really another world, or how you felt at that point?
Well, there was no question in our minds where we were. We'd been orbiting around the moon for quite a while.
I don't think we did a good job of preparing them for what was expected of them, especially after they flew and came back.
Does it have a philosophical dimension of any kind? Mr. Aldrin?
They somehow want to know what's in your inner thoughts. If we were that kind of people, we probably wouldn't have been given the opportunity. Poets, philosophers, no, you want people who are technically equipped to make decisions.
I felt very small and very lucky. And as we looked up on the surface from the surface of the moon, we could see above us up here the planet Earth. And it was very small, but it was very beautiful. And it looked like an oasis in the heavens. And we thought it was very important at that point for us and men everywhere to save that planet as a beautiful oasis that we together can enjoy for all the future.
Today, as astronauts speed again to the threshold of the moon, and as we prepare for the final achievement of this national goal, we have the obligation to look ahead to the role of the space program will play in the future.
There was a recognition
that decisions of what to do after Apollo were urgently needed. The idea was that just looking out to the end of the century in justifying NASA's missions wasn't a long enough view. And one of von Braun's assignments was organizing a view of NASA over the next 100 years or so, not just the 30 years remaining in the 20th century.
Where do you think we ought to go from here?
I think the next 10 years will undoubtedly be a little more versatile. We will have a number of activities in several areas rather than one big thrust in one direction.
He was looking at the big picture. Von Braun had a nuclear stage plan for Saturn V to go to Mars. And he met Kennedy at Los Alamos. They watched a nuclear test firing of an engine of what was called the NERVA, the nuclear engine test vehicle. With that nuclear stage on the top of the Saturn V, he was confident that we could send a crew out there.
If you had to estimate, when would you see a man on Mars?
Well, if you foot the bill in 1985, but at the moment there's no national commitment to do that, and it would probably require a national commitment of a similar magnitude as the Apollo program to land a man on the moon. But the technology is here to do it, and we could land a man on Mars in a little over 10 years if we really wanted to do it.
And von Braun presented that project to Nixon's Vice President, Agnew, 2 weeks after Neil walked on the moon. Nobody was listening, nobody cared.
This is a live special report from ABC Radio News, the flight of Apollo 12. I'm Mort Krim with Merrill Muller, the Apollo News.
It was never going to be the same again. The quest was fulfilled. And coverage of the second mission, you had to sell it a little bit to your editors. But that doing something for the first time is so much better than doing something for the second time. I mean, who remembers the second team that climbed Everest? And if you can do it once, you can do it again.
The Apollo program, short of money and no longer as fashionably popular as it once was, is ending. But it will end on a spectacular note with a nighttime launch, perhaps one of the most exciting sights a visitor to Cape Kennedy can see.
Well, what is it in our makeup that is possible for us to get excited about an Apollo 11, man's first step on the moon, and within 2 short years of that time, be as blasé as the public seems to be today about well, this particular launch and the space program generally?
Well, I think it's the excitement of the new. I mean, it's like getting married, you know, and being married. The love is still there, and the excitement is still there, but it's no longer the honeymoon.
I was all in favor of people going into space. It was the particular way of doing it which didn't make sense. Right from the beginning, Kennedy thought of it as a 10-year project, and that you went to the moon, you waved your flags, and you came home, and that was it. Apollo would have made sense if it had been a 100-year program. The Apollo mission was wonderful that they managed to do as much as they did.
It was amazing how quickly the money dried up in our space program. And the Cape, they started handing out pink slips right after the launch.
There is such a thing as spin-offs. And in the early 1960s, NASA brought together hundreds of the best minds it could find to build an Apollo guidance computer, capable enough to get these guys to the moon and back, and small enough to fit in the command module. At the end of the effort to build that guidance computer, the people working on it dispersed. And they went everywhere you can imagine. And these become the individuals who sort of build the computing industry in the 1970s.
The thing about technology is that every little advance really multiplies in a lot of unexpected areas. And in that sense, I think that the space program did a whole lot for technology. I think they accelerated miniaturization in the area of computers and everything else. I mean, all kinds of things were made smaller because you needed to make them smaller in order to fly.
The Apollo project was a great achievement. National pride, a dose of national pride was a good thing for the country. It showed that this country could do what it wanted to do technologically if it devoted enough time and effort and resources to it. I think we could do lots of things today technologically if there were the political will, and there was political will to go to the moon.
I think the really interesting thing in the future is Mars.
Mars is a long way off. I don't get all philosophical about we need a place to escape when the sun expands. You know, the sun isn't going to expand before we've wiped ourselves out 10 times over with global warming or some other thing. Sure, humans ought to go to Mars, but only after it's been thoroughly worked over for decades by unmanned vehicles.
An irony of ironies, as time has gone by, the robotic program now, of course, has taken over space exploration. Mars now has something like 15 or 16 American-made machines, either flying over or making their way across the Martian surface.
I think the manned program only begins really to make sense when it becomes sort of like the Mayflower going across the Atlantic. People go because they want to go, and they want to go and live there. So to my mind, these are the adventurers who will take risks and go out there and try and make a go of it. I don't know whether Mars is such an interesting place to go. That remains to be seen. Life expands, and life always takes chances. Taking risks is in fact what makes life interesting.
I believe we should go to the moon.
This program is available with PBS Passport and on Amazon Prime Video.